Hi everyone. Hope I am audible. Alish, just can we have a check if I am audible? Great. Thanks. Uh, Thanks, Alish. Thanks, Contact, for giving this opportunity to me. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll try to be brisk and crisp. We have limited time left. Also, I've sort of broken down my presentation into, let's say, four section. First part is I would like to say something around COVID. Second is all about who we are, what we do at Incref. Yeah. Then the third section will be all around the supply chain and how things probably are changing in supply chain since last few years and definitely given the COVID. Yeah. And the fourth session is all the question and answer session. But I would request audience to stop me in between, and you can raise your hand and ask a question. Yeah, or you can sort of type the question as well. Yeah. So instead of keeping it in the end, I would like it to be more interactive, so that it's more meaningful to the audience. Yeah. So you can stop me anywhere, anytime, raise your hand or write the question. Yeah. Uh, just to start with, the thing which I would like to say around COVID, and it's a bit of a soul searching for me as well. Many times in past, in my childhood or later on when I grew up and when I visited, let's say, various countries across globe, you know, I felt a bit ashamed. I felt a bit ashamed of being from a country which is poor, being from a country which is less educated. Yeah. During that journey, last 20 years, education has become good, but we are still relatively poor. Yeah. But then that sort of feeling subsided. But during this COVID session, that feeling came back again, and it came back very, very strongly. Only if we were sort of more wealthy, more richer, we had more sort of infrastructure, money, etc., we could have handled this COVID scenario very differently. Yeah. We wouldn't have seen people dying from, let's say, hunger, or not many people have died from hunger, but people traveling on road thousands of kilometers, dying on road, etc. Yeah. So just want to raise this to everybody. Uh, I will not miss any other wherever I get opportunity, I'll try to raise this. Together, we all have to become rich, more powerful. Yeah. uh, and we have to make sure that in future we are capable of handling such scenarios or any other scenario completely much better, much differently, and on our own. Yeah. And there is only one way to become rich as a country or as per person. Yeah. And that is, we collectively we have to increase all our sort of the sum total of our product and services divided by the number of population we have. So per capita improvement of product and services production is required, and just humble request for everybody to focus that for the nation. Yeah. Also, I believe, like it has been said in the previous panel discussion as well, COVID has not changed lot many things. Yeah. World was going in one direction, and COVID has just accelerated that direction. That's my perception, and especially given this on the supply chain side of things, it has just accelerated what supply chain was anyways going towards. Yeah. So that's a bit on COVID. Uh, Coming back, going to who we are, what we do, etc. So I'm co-founder of Incref. It's a 4-year-old startup backed by Sequoia and Bini Bansal. Prior to that, I was heading supply chain for Myntra. Before that, I co-founded Yebi.com. Between 2009 and 13, Yebi was the largest fashion e-commerce company of India. And prior to that, I have about 10 years of experience in textiles manufacturing and real estate. So that's a bit about myself. At Incref, we are focusing on our vision or mission, whatever you call it, is to make inventory a lot more efficient. Yeah. And we are focusing on solving or making inventory more efficient from by solving supply side of problems. So we have two products and one services. Our first product is Incref Assure. Arguably today it's the world's most accurate warehouse management system. Yeah. and definitely it's the most simplest warehouse management system. And it's deeply coupled with one of the fastest order management system, or let's say channel integration. Yeah. So in terms of most accurate warehouse management system, today only robots can beat us in terms of inventory accuracy and fulfillment accuracy. We have been able to beat even RFIDs, etc., within the warehouse by far. We are able to achieve 99.9% inventory accuracy at a bin level. I'm not talking about a warehouse level, but at a bin level. Yeah. So at a warehouse level, we are even much higher. And the warehouse management system has the capability to handle an infinite SKU scenario. Yeah. So it can handle extremely huge complexity. And it's extremely easy to use. Anybody who can read alphabet and number can run the warehouse. No need for training, no need for expertise or experience in running the warehouse. As I said, it's coupled with one of the fastest order management system or channel integration. What I mean to say is that we are able to integrate or sync inventory and orders across various channels, whether it's marketplaces or your own e-commerce or your own mobile commerce or social commerce or your omni-channel tech at the front stores, etc. So we are able to sync inventory and order within 5 to 30 seconds. And that allows us to even expose last piece of an SKU to multi-channel simultaneously. Yeah. So probably it's the only tech where marketplaces even sync inventory during big sale period as well. Yeah. So that's on the our first product, Assure. Our second product, Iris, is all around helping merchandiser take extremely fast, accurate, and smart decisions around merchandising. So it helps them take merchandising decisions pre-seasons, like what inventory they should have, where should they have, how much quantity, how much variety, in which size ratio, in which store, etc., etc. Yeah, and everything is done at a store level. So it allows them, it helps them to take those decisions very accurately. And during the season, yeah, so when the season starts, what inventory should go to a store during the running season, what should be replenished or what should be replaced, or what should be pulled back, or what should be, interstore transfer should be done. So that's a complete digitized platform we have. In India, probably it's one of its own kind product. Right now, it's completely focused on fashion and fashion-like categories, maybe like furniture or accessories or footwear. Yeah. We have recently also got cool vendor. We have been listed as cool vendor by Gartner for our Iris product. Yeah. So that's the second product. Third, what we do is a service. We have brought a concept of, let's say, warehousing as a service, where you can say we act like a Uber of warehousing, or maybe AWS of warehousing. So we on one side we partner with the client. Our clients are, let's say, brands and retailers and e-commerce companies and supply chain companies. On the other side, we partner with 3PLs. Yeah. So we fundamentally, it allows us to provide clients warehousing anytime, anywhere, scale up, scale down anytime you want, and it's a completely on OPEX model. So clients don't have to pay build their own warehouses or pay fixed fees or capex, etc. It's completely on transaction model. Yeah. Also, it allows us to distribute inventory of a client. Instead of keeping it in one warehouse, it allows us to distribute in, let's say, 9 warehouses or 10 warehouses or 4 warehouses, whatever is suitable to client, and keep the inventory closer to consumer. Yeah. Now, do we have any questions till now? No, I guess not. Yeah. So, moving to the topic for today, the changing fundamentals of supply chain. Well, probably the topic may not be exactly right, because fundamentals don't change. Yeah, the list of fundamentals generally remain constant. Only the priorities of those fundamentals can change. Yeah. Now, whichever business you are, the fundamentals of businesses are, top line, bottom line, growth in top line, or change business lines with time. These are the fundamentals which are at a very high level, are the fundamentals of a business. Now, when you come down to fundamentals of supply chain, So it's, I would like to divide it into, let's say, five parts. Obviously there is cost, there's quality, there's scale, there's speed, there's agility. These are the five fundamentals of supply chain, I would say. Yeah? Or let's say even it's applicable in manufacturing or anything else. Yeah? Now these are the fundamentals which, but the priority keeps on changing. I'll give you some examples. So for example, when per capita GDP of a country grows, yeah, people would want higher quality, yeah, which may come at a higher cost. Or if we are, let's say, a poor country, want people want low cost product, which comes along with low quality. Yeah? Not necessarily always, but many a times. A live example is that during COVID, where there is a bit of a problem on, let's say, employment, GDP, etc., production, etc. Yeah? The average selling price of products have fallen. Yeah? So a brand which was, let's say, selling a product at 1,000 rupees, the same brand demand has come down to, let's say, 800 rupees from various clients. Yeah? Another example of, let's say, agility or etc. is that, and again related to COVID, a lot of brands today are trying to move from, let's say, variety to core. So moving from, let's say, fashion to fast sellers. Yeah. So these fundamentals remain same, scale, speed, agility, cost, quality, but with time, the uh, priorities keeps on changing depending upon the circumstances. Yeah. My supply chain experience is limited to e-commerce and fashion, and probably in last 10 years, whatever uh, uh, let's say innovations you have seen or heard, I have been party to about 50% of them, and it is a first hand experience I had, thankfully, for last 10 years. So would be good if you can limit your questions more towards e-commerce or fashion. I may answer something outside that as well, but I am a better expert of e-commerce and fashion supply chain. Yeah. Um, Now coming digging deeper into supply chain. Uh, Today supply chain is becoming a mission critical. Yeah. Everybody gives this example, like say 20 years back, it was called warehouse, was called a go down, then it was called warehouses, and now it's called as fulfillment center. Yeah. And another example of it becoming a mission critical is, let's say, e-commerce companies. When today e-commerce companies design a sale event, yeah, uh, the supply chain capacities and capabilities become the key factor in designing a sale event or a BAU event. If they have to change their marketing budget, or they have to change their discount to change their, let's say, revenues and margins, it can happen with few clicks of buttons. Yeah, or maybe five people can do it. But when they want to sort of change the whole supply, increase the, let's say, sales by 5x, you probably end up scaling the whole infrastructure by 5x. Yeah? So supply chain is today becoming very, very mission critical. Also during COVID, I guess it has become a common word, right from parliament to every consumer doorstep. So more and more, the future of the world we will become a supply chain critical world. Yeah. Now, drilling down to what are the fundamentals changing, or let's say, what are the things which are influencing the changes in fundamentals. Yeah? So I've listed on about 12, 13 points. I'll go one by one. I think the biggest impact has been e-commerce. Yeah, e-commerce has brought new nuances like single piece fulfillment, infinite variety, speed of delivery, delivering to millions of addresses and new addresses every day. Yeah? Customer buys it first, experience the product later. Smaller manufacturers or smaller sellers are able to sell directly to consumer. The variety of customers an e-commerce company attracts is also humongous. It's not like a mall where a certain set of consumers will go. On e-commerce, any consumer can come. So e-commerce, I think, has played an extremely important role in influencing the changes in supply chain. Next big thing I see in future will be hyper local. Yeah, hyper local will become again very critical, fundamentally because it allows extremely fast speed of delivery and at a very low delivery cost. Yeah. Would like to give an example. Thousands of years back, probably in a village, somebody will produce something. He or she will go and sell within the village in a market, and consumers from the same village will consume it. Yeah. An extreme example of hyperlocal where the production, the let's say selling and the consumption happening in the same area. Yeah. I think globally things may move again back to some sort of similar structure. Yeah. Also, thing is that e-commerce and hyperlocal combined will disrupt the complete middle chain. It will disrupt middlemen. Yeah? Uh, Goods need not pass multiple hands before it reach to consumer. It will disrupt real estate, and hopefully for good, because real estate has not allowed many businesses in India to flourish. Probably in India, India is one of the highest real estate rental cost divided by revenue factor. Yeah. I'm not talking about real estate per square feet. Even there, we are very high. But real estate rentals, let's say, divided by revenue produced out of that real estate, we are one of the highest in the world. Let's say in retail and fashion retail, a brand may end up having 15 or 20% of its revenue as a rental cost. If you go to, let's say, Europe or US, it may be just 3, 4, 5%. And the same impact has happened in many industries. So that's the second point which I see happening in future, hyperlocal. Now, third thing is I feel is decentralization. Now, this centralization and centralization keeps on swinging with time. There is not a permanent direction, but given e-commerce, given hyperlocal, decentralization will become critical, and COVID will further help. Will further move. I've been speaking to quite a few CEOs in fashion industry. Most of them now want to decentralize warehouse, not because hyperlocal demands it or because e-commerce demands it, but because of all the bottlenecks seen during COVID. If that centralized warehouse is locked, your whole revenues are locked. Yeah. So de-risking is the new mantra for decentralization. So that's the third big thing which we'll see in supply chain. And this decentralization will further help e-commerce and hyperlocal and agility and speed of delivery. In past, when people try to decentralize, they ended up having more inventory for same revenue. But today, given the technology, where technology can showcase single view of inventory, decentralized warehouse doesn't mean more inventory for same revenue. Yeah. So company like Flipkart or Amazon or Myntra may have 20, 30 warehouses, but that doesn't mean they have more inventory because they have more warehouses. The inventory is proportional to business demand, not proportional to warehouses. Then fourth thing, as I said, because small will become good again. Yeah, there are many examples of small becoming good again. Let's say across supply chain or outside supply chain. I'll give some examples of outside supply chain. Again, e-commerce is one example. A 6-inch mobile can showcase infinite variety, lot more variety than a million square feet mall can show. Yeah. Or let's say power plants. You need to add coal power plants or thermal power plants and hydro power plants. A certain size had to be there to make it economically viable. Now today with solar power, you can have you can have a small solar power plant with much lesser megawatt, but still, let's say, commercially viable. And then you create a network of many such power plants and put it into a single power line or a transmission line. So small is becoming beautiful again, and probably we may see warehouses becoming smaller again. It's a very I might be saying a controversial statement, but I can see that happening. I can see that happening. That warehouses may become small again. Yeah. Uh, Also, it was many times it's thought that in warehousing, larger the warehouse, lesser the cost. My experience has been different. My experience is that size of warehouse and cost of warehouse is a U relationship with size of warehouse. As the size of warehouse increases, the cost reduces, and after a certain point, as the size of warehouse increases, the cost of warehousing start increasing. So from decrease to increase. So that's the fourth thing. Uh, Fifth factor I see which is influencing supply chain will be outsourcing. Um and again, outsourcing again, like centralization versus decentralization, outsourcing versus in-house keep shifting very frequently, probably once in a decade or whatever, once in 5 years or once in a decade. Huh? Uh, Earlier in recent times, it got aided by GST, but now more and more it's getting aided by specialization. You need to be uh, have specialization in managing logistics and warehousing. It's no longer every man's job. Yeah. Plus, the demand of flexibility is there, and outsourcing helps you to be more flexible. I'll give one example. When I was running AB, I couldn't find even one single 3PL player. This is 10 years back, who could have handled AB warehouse, an e-commerce warehouse. Not even one single player could have handled. In fact, the situation was such that at that point of time, we ended up, apart from, let's say, Flipkart, etc., we ended up building our own logistic services as well. Yeah? Now, today, if a new e-commerce company comes, they will never build a logistic in-house. They will outsource, because you have some beautiful companies doing great job there. Yeah? Similarly, same thing has started happening in warehousing. Now, new e-commerce companies are not running their own warehouses. Yeah. In fact, even old brick and mortar companies are also now looking at outsourcing warehousing. Yeah. Logistics in general have always been outsourced. So that's the fifth factor. Sixth, I would say, is capex to opex. That's the new world. SaaS, software as a service, or warehousing as a service, or a logistic as a service, where you pay per use, you pay per transaction. Give some examples, very different examples outside supply chain. Example like, youngsters today are not buying houses. Youngsters today, or they are buying, but the percentage is dropping. Or they are not buying cars. Again, percentage is dropping. Yeah? Now, buying a house or buying a car used to be a prized possession, a prized achievement. Few years back. I'll give my own example. My father bought one house in his life and one car in his life. And car was very late in later part of his career, and house was after he finished his career. I have bought a couple of houses and sold them. I have bought, let's say, 3 4 cars, may end up buying 4 5 more cars. So that's the change. Now I'll give another example of my son. Leave apart from buying, or he's not even interested in learning driving a car. He thinks it's useless. In the age of Ola and Uber, he thinks it's no fun. And when I was youngster, I was like dying to learn ride a bike or a car. So that's the change which is happening, and it's all about moving from capex to opex, pay per use, on demand services, etc. The seventh point, I think a lot of people have already touched in the past panel discussion, is also variety. So variety per capita is increasing. Yeah. I'll give a simple example. 30 years back, probably there were only 4 SKUs in a car. Today, probably you have 200 SKUs. And I am giving an example of car. Smaller the product, the varieties are further increasing much multifold. Yeah. So you will see, okay, in this example, there's a 50-fold increase in a SKU of a car. The population has not increased 50 folds in last 30 40 years. So that means variety is increasing faster than consumption. What that leads to is the quantity produced per variety, or depth per SKU, we call in our supply chain terminology. Yeah, that is reducing. Yeah, and that creates its own challenges and nuances. There is overstock, there is understock, there is unsold inventory. Accuracy at warehouse level, in logistics, etc., become extremely critical. I'll give another example. I've personally seen in an e-commerce company where the revenue grew 50-fold, let's say across few years, but the depth per SKU remains same. Yeah? So that means the number of SKU grew 50 times. Yeah? Let's say in a matter of few years. So that variety, let's say per capita is dramatically increasing and will keep on increasing, and it will bring on its own challenges. Yeah. Then eighth point is number of sales channels are increasing and changing. There's a brand we work with, and about 20 years back, 80% of their revenue was through distribution channel. So they will give it to distributors, distributor will give to MBOs, etc., and sale will happen from mom and shop stores, etc. Yeah? Today, the distribution model gives them only 10% of revenue, and their e-commerce revenue is 30%. Yeah? So from 0%, they move to 30% in a span of, let's say, 5-10 years. So there's a constant change happening, and this change is happening everywhere at a faster speed. And this change forces us to design for flexibility. Whatever you're designing, your warehousing or logistics or whatever, your production, manufacturing, it has to be designed for flexibility. Yeah? Today it's becoming very, very challenging to design something for next 10 years. And my humble opinion is nobody should ever design anything for next 10 years. Gone are those days. You should only design for next maybe 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. And whatever you design, keep it flexible. Yeah. Any questions till now?
Sorry to cut you, Mr. Jain. We actually are, on the schedule now. So
Oh,
I
sorry.
think to wrap it up, that we have a networking session on the way, and next speaker is also waiting.
Oh.
So if you can wrap up in the next 1 minute, take up some quick questions. We'll take it
I will
further.
rather take questions. Yeah.
So to the audience, addressing if you have any questions regarding the topic that Mr. Jain has just shared with us, you are free to raise your hand, and we'll just have you on board to ask a question.
Yeah, I think JB. Hi, JB.
Hey Rajul, how are you doing?
Good, JB. Sorry for eating up your time. Next
No
presentation,
worries,
I
no
guess.
worries. You made half my speech anyway. So Rajul, I really like the way you articulated, the fundamentals that have to be evaluated and how the priorities may change,
Yeah.
going from all the way from hyperlocal to sales channels. I think I wanted to get your insights on how you think technology can help managing this prioritization. What are the key aspects of technology you think will shine through, in this dynamic situation?
Every aspect, every single aspect will be driven by technology, right from predicting demand, right from predicting consumer behavior, right from let's say predicting conversion, uh, to agile supply chain. Everything will be sort of get impacted by technology and analytics. Let's say data analytics and technology will be the key aspect to help manage this change. There's no other way. There's absolutely no other way. Yeah? So technology, innovation, automation, data analytics, every single aspect, even the behavior of your workforce, uh, everything will be influenced and monitored and controlled or guided by technology.
I mean, that's music to my ears. As a technology company, that's great to hear somebody who consumes technology say that. And also creating technology along with us.
Yeah.
Thanks for the response, Raju.
Thanks, JB. Thanks.
All right. So do we have any more questions from the audience?
I guess
All
not.
right.
Thanks,
Mr. Jain,
Alish.
would you like to conclude?
Yeah. What I can do is, uh, I've noted those 12, 13 points which I believe is influencing the change. I can share with the audience wherever they want. I can put in the chat itself. Yeah, I'll do that.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the patience. Bye. Sorry, Alish.